Hello everyone, James Donaldson here, and great ways to support me are by buying my Spy series, and of course if you want to follow me on Instagram to see what I'm doing between videos, feel free to do that. As far as Patreon, I'm probably going to get rid of it, and it's not because nobody's on there, which there's two, but that's not the reason. America is about not paying taxes. Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about my Mark 18, how I have it set up. I do want to preface this with, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to talk about why, and I'm going to replace it with something else. So, Mark 18 is basically an upper that's 10.3 inches. And I know there's the Mark 18 squad, crew, whatever that's going to come out and talk about it's got to be this and got to be that. So let me just hit a brief history of it, because the video is not about the history of the Mark 18. This isn't Forgotten Weapons. However, I kind of want to lay out for those of you that don't understand. So, kind of started with Colt, and basically they were... Navy was the first ones to buy the Mark 18s, actually, and for boat warfare. But basically, they needed a shorter barrel because they were going into mount and doing all kinds of stuff. Really, more for Iraq is where this kind of gun has its purpose. Not even so much Afghanistan. So they needed a barrel. 10.3 was the shortest they could go and still suppress it, at least at the time. Now that being said, there's also talk of, well, also that's really about as short as you can go and get decent reliability. So from there, there's a couple companies that actually did it before Daniel Defense, but Daniel Defense made the rail that they used once they moved away from the KAC rail, the Armament company rail. So this is an awesome rail. It's one of my favorite things about this gun. And so that's kind of why Daniel Defense does their own Mark 18 upper. It's got a 10.3 inch barrel, of course their rail that really was used. And so the Mark 18, you're going to have the Mod 0 and the Mod 1, and basically the SOP mod program, which stands for Special Operations Peculiar Modification. It has to do with basically you get one gun, maybe a couple uppers, and you get all kinds of different optics and all kinds of different muzzle devices, stocks, all that kind of stuff, so you can outfit the gun for your mission, which modularity has its place. And this isn't coming from my experience. Granted, I didn't kick in doors for the Army, but I did have a job that put me in harm's way. So modularity has its place, but usually it's got to be quick. When you're changing out barrels and changing out sights, you got to re-zero, you got to do this and that. Stocks, you're probably going to end up with one and just keep it. So good idea in the end, but for most people I recommend just getting one weapon platform, configure it one way, and stick with it. So anyway, without further ado, let's talk about my Mark 18. Alright, so going over just the general modification. So obviously I've got a Streamlight HLX. I will tell you that I would probably go Surefire next time around. And That's just because I've had a lot of problems with this switch working with all the heat generated from this gun. This gun gets very hot, partly because it's so short, then add the fact that I run it suppressed. So I would use a Surefire connector, in which I'd have to have an adapter, which costs about $100. So the $100 I saved by going Streamlight over Surefire is negated when I have to use an adapter to use a Surefire pressure pad, which also costs about $100. So I'm not really saving any money. That said, I've used an identical light, not the same light. That was my light I used on my surface weapon overseas. The light itself is fantastic. Probably because my surface weapon's 14.5 inch barrel. That's probably why I didn't have problems with that pad. Oh, actually, it's because I used a dual Surefire pressure pad because I had a PEC 15 on it as well. So I guess I didn't use a Streamlight pressure pad, and that's why the one overseas worked. Anyway, I got Daniel Defense iron sights, and I've got a Daniel Defense 1913 QD sling mount, which I like for controlling the weapon. I like having the sling up here. Although with the next gun, it's going to have a mount down here that it comes with. And we attempted to try that because when I do grip the rifle, the sling gets in the way. Anyway, I have a Gemtech flash hider, bilock, or quick mount, because I use Gemtech cans. So this is the G5. It's a fantastic can as far as herring attenuation. It's a 5.56 bore, so especially in the Mark 18 platform, pushes a lot of gas back my way. For those of you who don't know, the Mark 18 is overgassed to help it chew through cheap rounds, make sure it'll cycle everything, also in poor conditions. So gas tube's bigger, allowing more gas to flow through, making it overgassed. So when you add a suppressor on, even more gas, yay! And so, for instance, I got a Bootleg adjustable bolt carrier, and it came with the bolt as well, so bolt carrier group. And so it allows more gas to come out of the bolt carrier, so it sends it out to the side. Now, I have noticed a difference, but at the end of the day... Alright, fully unsuppressed setting. Not pleasant. Not pleasant at all. Fully suppressed setting. Better. It's a Mark 18 with a restrictive can on it. It's gonna be pretty rough, especially when I fire in faster iterations. So it's a great bolt carrier, don't get me wrong, it's just for this platform, it just wasn't enough to help cure the overgassing. Now I also have a Griffin Armament, I think they call it the SNATCH charging handle, and basically it feels great, looks great. Again, I don't know how much it's doing to actually divert the gas, so it's kind of the down and dirty. Now for Optic, this is the first Optic I had on it, and of course, obviously, I put it back on. It is the SPARC AR from Vortex. It's fantastic. I like it a lot. I really like the simplicity of just a red dot. I also very much like how these caps simply flip open, be attached to each other, and there you go. This is part of the Optic. It's not just the mount. They have, of course, the mount on the bottom, and they have a spacer. So if you want to do lower 1/3 co-witness, which I do, runs off a AA battery, and that's pretty fantastic. And then just a couple simple buttons as auto shut off, which I would turn it off if I was using this gun for duty. But just because I train with it, and I do dry fire drills and all that kind of stuff, it's not really a big deal if it turns itself off. I'm not going on 8-hour missions with this gun. That's not what I'm doing. So, with all that said, I left the grips on. I like them, and as I said, I really, really like the rail on this gun. I just like I can grab onto it, especially with gloves, and just moving around. Moving on to optics. So as you'll see in the footage, I use the Vortex UH1 a lot. Basically because I switched to it, didn't want to re-zero, really wanted to get familiar with the holographic sight. It's great, but honestly, I prefer the red dot. And there's nothing wrong with this optic whatsoever. I may have an opportunity to get into night vision. I may have an opportunity to get into night vision in the near future in terms of shooting civilian side versus just using it for the Army. And so this doesn't have a night vision mode, so that would be shorting me there. SPARC AR does. But anyway, you're going to see what I'm going to do as far as optics for that. I did get this Vortex Razor Gen 3, and I had plans to put on the MK18 and test distance and all that kind of stuff. But I have the next gun on order heading my way, so I'm just going to throw it on there. I don't want to have to re-zero everything a bunch of times. So this will get put through its paces on the next gun. Anyway, so really all these optics are going to be fine. I would say this might be a little bit overkill on a 10.3 inch barrel, which we'll talk about why here shortly. So going over the lower, this is, believe it or not, a Palmetto Blemished lower, stripped, as I got it. Cost me about $30. So I just didn't understand why I should pay $100 for similar ones when the build quality is the same. And I know people are going to argue with me and they're going to, well, blah, blah, blah. Really, when it comes to a piece of metal, as long as the type of metal is the same and it's forged, unless you're going feature to feature, they're all pretty much the same. Hate to tell you. So, with that being said, it was good enough for me. Now, the grip is actually, because I was building the lower out myself, as Daniel Defense, at least to my knowledge at the time, didn't offer a pistol variant of their own. Of course, they did shortly after I built this. But I was building up, so I've always wanted a 416, and so I put a 416 grip on it. There you go. I have a Geissele 2-stage trigger. It's just the SSD, I think it's what's called. Just their basic 2-stage trigger. I like it, but I shoot the mill trigger a lot, so while I think it's better, at the end of the day, I'd rather be more proficient with a mill trigger for both respects in which I shoot. So I wouldn't necessarily do that again, just for me. As far as the trigger itself, it's a great trigger. I don't think anyone would ever deny that. So I also ended up buying the Geissele lower parts kit, since I needed a lower parts kit anyway. Now I've got a Shockwave brace, Shockwave pistol stabilizing brace on here, and basically it comes with its own kit. So it came with a buffer tube, came with a buffer and buffer spring. I would go H3 buffer, something definitely heavier running this, since it's overgassed, got a suppressor, all that. I'd like to slow things down in here, but that being said, it's just at the point where it's not really necessary to do that. So with that in mind, of course, I've got a T-Rex arm, sling, I don't know what they call it, it's like a sling keep basically. But either way, I like organizing the sling when the gun's not slung around me. And this is a Blue Force Gear sling. I think they have the best slings. I've been using their slings for many years, really just the two of them. And I just bought a couple for hunting long guns. But basically I like that they're simple. There's one adjustment. There's not all this little that you got to tie down, this little that, and this isn't going to get caught up. It's basically just this. And it's slung tight, which is how I like it to be slung. And then pull here on the tab and it loosens up. And now I got room to move, and I have it adjusted so that it's tight enough. I still got some decent pull with it. It's not hanging down or anything, especially when I put my hand on there. And yeah, all black one is what I used for my deployment. That was the first one I bought from them. So yeah, I like the sling a lot. So the only other thing I did on here is I used a Daniel Defense rear plate right there so that I could have a QD connection there. And it's one of those things where I think I'd rather have it back here, just from experience and using a slightly The rifle's set up slightly different, which is my service rifle. I like having, again, more control by having connector back there. So, with all that said, let's talk suppression specifically. Alright, now I know I talked about it a little bit already, overgas nature and all that, but as far as suppression, I haven't gotten to hear a lot of Mark 18 suppressed, but I will say that this Gemtech G5 can does a great job of suppressing it. I mean, the sound attenuation, I'd really like to hear this can on a longer barrel AR, or any rifle, especially semi-automatic, just because it does a really great job. One of my favorite things to do is to shoot this can a couple times, see if people comment on, oh, it's still kind of loud, or see what they say, and then take the can off, because if you've ever heard a Mark 18 unsuppressed, you think the world is ending. So, and then I put the can back on, and then they kind of see the point there. But, all that said, the first can that I was running on it was the Gemtech 1, and I have a review on this can actually, and I do like this can a lot. And so with the 30 cal bore, it opens things up quite a bit, cuts down on the gas, and it is nice, it is noticeable even outdoors, so I do appreciate that. Now while this is zeroed to the other can, when I'm doing closer work, especially 25 yards and in, it doesn't really matter. So especially if I know I'm going to be running Ear Pro anyway, then a fair amount of the time I'll throw on this can instead. Or if I'm shooting with people that are newer to suppressors, I don't want them to get the wrong idea about a suppressed AR-15 in terms of gas blowback into their face. So I try to cut down on that as much as I can. So all that said, I haven't gotten to experience it with an actual Surefire can or any of that, so as far as that goes, I can't compare notes. Alright, so let's talk performance at 300 yards. Yeah, it'll do it. It'll do it. Barrel length increases velocity. Velocity increases energy. Bullet weight also increases energy, but if you double a bullet's weight, you double its energy. If you double its velocity, you quadruple its energy. So velocity plays a really big role, and everything I've read and come to understand, especially in time since owning this and seeing things for myself, is just a little more barrel actually does a fair amount. One thing to keep in mind is when it comes to guns and barrel length, nothing's really linear. In fact, sometimes you hit a point of diminishing returns. So, and it also comes down to ammo that you use. Now, can you do a study where you choose the perfect barrel length, the perfect gun, the perfect round by manufacturer and weight and grain and load? Yeah, you can do all that. That's going really into the weeds. I kind of generalize. So, something to keep in mind when you're shooting out. So this does hit 300 yards, no problem. Put the red dot sight on it. I'm rolling in some footage. So, but I will say this, I've hit those same gongs with my 270 hunting rifle, which granted it's moving at about 3,200 feet per second muzzle velocity. I'm not sure what this is, but it's going to be drastically lower. And I really wasn't sure I was hitting the steel at first. I thought I was missing. And I'd shift my aim just a little bit. It was bright that day. As you can tell by the footage, I didn't adjust the camera properly. But you can, I would see a puff of dirt above, puff of dirt below, be aiming in between. And because it's not magnified, I couldn't tell, I couldn't see what was going on. And I was hitting it. Again, it was weak when it was hitting it. So, what is your bullet going to do downrange? If you're trying to use one of these to defend yourself or invade another country, kill, whatever, the bullet type, the bullet weight. By the way, by type I mean the tip and what it does, what the bullet does. The weight, the velocity, a lot of things come into play. Some bullets are designed to only do their thing in a certain range of velocity. So you don't want them to go too fast, you don't want them to go too slow. Either way, no, I would not want to get hit by this at 300 yards, but you're not ballistically performing at the same level you would be even just going to 11.5. So, that is kind of my analysis of the distance. It had no problem. It was a pretty flat trajectory, pretty much hitting right where I put the red dot. Now granted, I will mention, I do a 36 yard zero on red dots because I don't have to really change my aim. The place I can shoot at, I can shoot various disciplines out to 300 yards. I can't really practice beyond that, but 300 yards, Army chose it for a reason. Most engagements are at that distance and in. So I do feel that if I'm practicing at that distance and in, I'm still doing myself a great service. So, no, Mark 18 at that distance, not really cutting it. If this is all you had, could you perform? Absolutely, especially with practice. So, yeah, if you practice a lot with this, and you're shooting at 300 yards versus somebody with a 20-inch barrel that never shoots at that distance and they have a red dot, you'd probably outshoot them. So some people might even say, okay, if it's a questionable barrel performance, then why even use that barrel? Well, the Mark 18 was being ordered because if you think about it, you have a short gun here, or you can even switch out lowers and just have one, switch out uppers and have one lower. But basically, your manual of arms is the same, your parts are pretty much the same, your ammo is the same. So where you have various units that are deployed and they're going to have their CQB guy who might be having one of these and then somebody with a 14.5, etc., etc. You're keeping it really simple. And honestly, I did consider at one point getting a Daniel Defense M4A1, which is basically a 14.5 version of this, and just having the two of them. But again, at the end of the day, for various reasons, I decided to leave this platform altogether. But again, when it comes to familiarity and parts management, just having something that's identical and just, hey, this is just shorter, so we'll use it in that house. Great. Very effective for that. So I get questions, why not Form 1? Well, I don't want to pay an extra $200, and it's a lot harder to sell off a Form 1. So I wanted to use a variety of pistols, and then if I decided to SPR them, then do that then. So that's why I haven't done that. So what do I like about this gun? Well, it runs great. It's damned rugged and durable, and it's very maneuverable. Even because I'm going to add a can. I'm just going to. Pretty much on any rifle I have. Bolt action, semi-auto, doesn't matter. I'm going to put a can on it. So shortening that barrel helps even more with the maneuverability because I'm adding length again. So there's that. Also, it is... it's just a classic. It's just a classic gun. So things I dislike. Parts wear and gas in the face. Parts wear because of the violent nature of this system. It's going to beat up parts more. That's just how it works. So, yeah. So like I said, it's kind of nice timing that I got a new bulk carrier group. And when I sell it, I'm going to sell the original with it. You can see the original's not totally had its day, but it's definitely it's been put through some paces. And then this one here is pretty much brand new. I only have a couple hundred rounds through this, if that. So why am I getting rid of it? Let's talk about that. I've talked a lot about gas in the face, so I'm not going to talk about that again. I mentioned parts wear. So I could put in money to get this thing to run perfect like a top. But I guess my issue is, at what point am I basically going to have two ARs because I've replaced so many parts? And I'm putting a lot of money into a gun that's already expensive to make it operate in a manner it was not designed to operate in. Yes, the AR-15 or platform, pistol, or rifle is kind of like adult Legos, as I tell people. But if it'd get to the point where I change too much out. I'd have rather built something from the ground up, including parts that I like off this gun, so like the rail, or just get a system that's designed to run suppressed. So I don't want to spoil what I'm getting, what I'm going for, but if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see, because I'll definitely have pictures of it before I do a video on it. But I'm basically going to switch to a different platform, and I'll do a video talking about why I went with that platform. You can obviously see why I'm moving away from this one. So the main reason I love this gun is it's violent, it's crude, it's unrefined, and it has a field-made look. When I look at it, I just feel like SOCOM was like, shit, we need to go into these houses a bunch, let's just lop off this barrel, put a die on, throw a muzzle device and suppressor on, and let's get in there. So I like it for that reason. I think it's cool when you see things in the military that are field expedient designs and modifications to various tools, is what these things are. Vehicles, guns, plate carriers, all of it. They're just tools. So when people take matters in their own hands and make something more effective for what they're doing, I think that's awesome. And there's history behind this gun. There's heritage. I very much like it. And if it wasn't such... I mean, honestly, this is going to sound silly, but it almost belongs in a museum more than in my gun safe. Mainly because my guns are tools. I use them. And it just doesn't... It's not doing the job that I need. That doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it won't do the job that you need. Maybe you have no interest in suppressing. Maybe you, I don't know, want lead poisoning. Whatever your reason may be for how you have things set up, this just may be the gun for you. So to close, I would liken this gun to a Dodge Viper. If you're a gun guy, chances, or gal, you're probably also into cars to some degree. So I've driven a Dodge Viper, an older one, early 2000s I want to say it was, and it just wanted to go. It didn't want to be driven slowly through a parking lot. That car is not designed to go get groceries. That car is meant for war. Now, its war is on the street, and this is a little different, but I think you understand my point. Whereas the platform I'm going to and some other platforms could be likened more to the precision of, say, like a BMW. So I'm kind of upgrading to a BMW M5 away from a Dodge Viper. Nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with either one, but for my needs, the BMW M5 is going to serve a better purpose. This has been James Donaldson with the Contemporary Gentleman, and until next time, keep your composure.